Welcome to another day at High Impact Motorsports, and today we're working on a 240SX. And this 240SX has some very big problems. So the issue with this car is that it was driven until it got really hot, and the person that was driving it thought the car was on fire. Our customer ended up picking the car back up, and now it's here. Now we don't know if the car died or the person was driving it shut it off. We don't know about that, but that is something that can commonly happen where an engine gets super hot and it stays running until you shut it off because the piston to wall clearance is so tight, and it still ends up with enough compression to run as it's hot. Now, once that piston shrinks down, once it cools off, it's definitely not going to run. So far what we've done is we've done a compression test. We have ran that test. It only gets 10 psi of compression in actually cylinders 3 and 4. The rest are at 0. The oil smells terrible. I think the next step is we need to take it apart and see what's going on inside. Alright, so here's the engine in question. It's a single cam KA24E, and we're going to go ahead and start taking this apart. I'm going to go ahead and start taking it apart right now, see as we go what happens, what we find. Alright, we're in here working, and that bolt secures the distributor down, and as you can see, it's not locked down, so the timing has never been set. And there was a vacuum leak on a hose. This hose right here, that hose clamp, or that zip tie was doing a really good job of keeping that from leaking, right? Alright, so we've got the intake manifold off and exhaust manifold unbolted. Head is still on, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and now I'm going to do a leak down test on cylinder 1. So something that happens sometimes, before we get started on that leak down, sometimes something that happens is that your bolts for the valve cover will strip out. They don't have a lot of thread on them, and if you look at this guy, the thread is still, the aluminum of the cylinder head thread is on the bolt itself. I'll show you. You can see I can screw the thread off that bolt. That's part of the cylinder head. 3 of the bolts on the cylinder head are that way. We'll need to put inserts into the head if we use this cylinder head in order for the valve cover to bolt back on. So what I have down here is a leak down tester. This is a cylinder leak down tester. And what I can do with this device is I can apply pressure into the cylinder, and this gauge will tell me how much of it is leaking out versus holding in that cylinder. So a good engine will hold about 80 to 100%. We're going to push this up to, I think it's like 90 psi, and we're going to see where the percentage goes. So we're going to put 90 psi of air into the cylinder, see how much is sealing, and then we'll see where it's going. So notice that we're at 90 psi. We have almost 100% leakage, and it's coming right from down there, which means it's coming out of the crankcase. There might be a little bit, no, I don't feel anything coming out the valves. Okay. And then over here on the exhaust side, maybe a little bit out the exhaust. So yes, that tool right there has verified that we have almost 100% leakage, we have no compression, and I can actually feel the air coming up this point right here. So there's tremendous amount of air coming past the rings, which means the rings are bad. Now we could just stop here and say, okay, we're done, and then put a different engine in and be done with it, but we want to show you guys what we see. So I'm going to go ahead and now take the cylinder head off, because I'm only a couple more steps away. I want to see what the cylinders look like. Alright, the cylinder head is now off of the engine, and it's sitting over there. Let's take a quick gander at that before we get under the hood. As you look, you'll notice that all the valves are intact. It doesn't look terrible in the cylinders. Under the hood, here's the head gasket. So let's look at the head gasket. It got massively hot, but there's no telltales on the head gasket. Yeah. Now let's look in the cylinders. This is where we're going to find our real problem. And that right there, that scuffing is what you need to know about. So if you look at the scuffing on these two cylinders, you can see where the pistons have just rubbed the cylinder wall like I was talking about. And they expand and they expand and they expand, and then the pistons end up captivating the rings captive, and when they shrink back, there's no compression. So how do you remedy that? Well, the remedy for this is going to be a different engine, probably, or boring the cylinders out and replacing the pistons. That's really the only resolution you can have here. Some people might suggest, well, why don't you just hone out the cylinders, replace the pistons and rings? If the bores were clear enough, I'd say maybe, but you end up scratching the walls up so bad, that's really not a good solution. And really the worst part about this whole job is the fact that I actually know the person that put this together. And there's a few things that aren't right in the assembly. And that's just a fact. There's things that aren't right in the assembly. I still think fondly of the person. I still really want the best for that individual, and I'm not going to name them and call them out because that's foolishness on my part. But there were things that were done wrong when this engine was assembled. So there's a few things wrong here. We got to come up with a plan. There are some options, one of which is to do a single cam KA engine out of a truck. There are some things that change that have to happen. We might do that. We happen to have one of those ready to go. We might send the engine out for machine work. There's a number of things we might do. Everything else is looking fairly okay, so we'll have to see where we go. Alright, so we've done some thinking. And what we've discovered is that we have this KA single cam truck block sitting in our shop that had been machined. It's actually been bored over 20, and it has pistons, and we're basically of the mind that this is the same engine. We know that it is the same engine with some qualifiers. Truck motors have the oil pan in the back, where the sump is in the back, and truck motors also have a different starter mounting. There's also a couple of other little things that are kind of cool about the car motor that do not happen in the truck motor. The car motor has floating wrist pins on the connecting rods to piston, and the truck motors are just a conventional press fit piston. The other thing that's really cool about the car motors is that the main bearings on the crank are held together by a girdle. So the truck motor also uses the similar cylinder head on the earlier ones. The ports are the same, the valve sizes are the same, but it uses a different duration of camshaft. So what we're thinking we're going to do, the other thing is that the trucks use V-belts versus multi-rib belts on the accessories. So what we're thinking is that we're going to build a truck block that we already have, which we know we can build. We have everything to do it. We're going to build that. We're going to use the harmonic balancer from the 240 engine, which will allow us to bolt all the accessories up. We'll use a different starter, which a 1983 200SX will get us the starter we need with the orientation that will mount up to the transmission correctly. And then there's actually a process where we just use long bolts to pull through and mount the starter just fine. And then we'll swap the camshaft from the 240 engine into the hard body engine, and then we will bolt all of our accessories and manifold and everything else up to this hard body engine. and it should actually work out just fine. It should actually be a fairly solid engine when we're done. DJ, what do you think? What do you think about this this idea that we're going to be doing with this?
I think it's going to be really cool. It's going to get a lot of coverage on it. I've heard about this on forums, but we're actually going to put it to light.
Well, and then what about that dipstick tube?
That looks like an easy one. Just block off where it goes in, and the sad part, you just got to drill. Make sure you don't go too big since it's press fit. I think we'll be all right. I think we'll be in good hands.
You've done a really good job of painting this engine block so far.
So far. Yeah, so far. There's some flaws. No, I'm just
But it should work out just fine, because the accessories, all the bolt positions are the same for accessories. This should work out fine.
Yeah, I mean, you got the Mexico stamp right there. Beautiful. I'm pretty sure quality.
Alright, so we're going to go ahead. We've got some parts ordered. So we got to get some bearings in, and as soon as we get that stuff in, we're going to get that assembled. Alright, so I got DJ over here with the 240SX, and he's got a chain on this engine getting ready to pull it out. So we got that, and then over here we'll show you the block. So with a great deal of precision, this is the dipstick tube hole for the truck. This is the bump out on the block that can be used for a front dipstick. It's not drilled until we did, so that's all drilled out for the dipstick to go in for a car dipstick. And that actually is that's the tricky part, right? How was that tricky?
Oh yeah, time consuming. Don't want to mess it up because you basically only have one shot. I'd recommend anyone that doesn't feel comfortable take it to a machine shop, but I want to give it a try.
That's the tricky part out of the way. Now it's just parts and stuff are coming in. DJ's gonna get this motor out. We're gonna disassemble the stuff off of it that we'll need. We'll go from there. I got DJ over here in the corner.
Sure do.
And DJ is working on the cylinder head. So what are you doing over here, DJ? Can you explain for me?
Explain to you guys, I'm mating the valves to the cylinder head, to the valve seat. Make sure we don't have any leakage on the valves. I like to use this grinding compound right here. So we have the very rough stuff to get a good surface going, and then this guy will finish it up, make it look beautiful in here. And what you're trying to do is just not have any pitting. I would love to give an example, but I didn't look over. Basically, you're just trying to make sure there's no high or lows. Like you can see within here, like there's some form of pitting.
So we call that valve lapping, right?
Yes, we do.
So you're going through, getting all these valves lapped in and good for the engine.
Oh yeah, still do it by hand. It's time consuming and tedious, but it pays off in the end.
Alright, DJ's over here putting pistons in.
Sure am.
It's got the connecting rods.
Getting ready to check clearance using plastic gauge on the connecting rod.
Yeah, just getting her all back together again. So we got one.
This motor's crazy. They do use angles, so 12 foot-pounds plus 65 degrees on the rod bearing caps. And yeah. Alright,
I'm with DJ again. He's got pistons in the motor.
Pistons in the block.
So we've got all the pistons are installed, and
ready for the cylinder head to go on. Best way to line the timing chain, get this guy on, and then line up your marks.
Yep. You'll note that the alignment dowels are in. There's one there and one there. Do not forget those, otherwise the head gasket will walk. And then once the head is on, of course it's at TDC1.
Oh yeah.
And so the head's at TDC1, the block is at TDC1. So now it's just time to put her together. Actually, I like to counter rotate the engine just a shade so that you've got piston down. So when you put the head on, you know where TDC is down here, but that's the keyway all the way up. I like to have that piston just slightly down, so when I put the head on, I'm in no danger of any of the valves touching. And then once I get the head correct on the timing, then it's just a matter of rotating that all the way up, and you're safe. Alright, DJ's putting on the water pump, and there's something comical about this water pump that I have to bring up. So, we went to Rock Auto and bought a water pump, and this is the brand of water pump that we got for that Nissan motor. I really hope this isn't a bad sign. Those of you in the comment section already know my disdain for Chrysler products, so buying a Mopar water pump, a Magneti Marelli water pump for a Nissan, I'm already gritting my teeth. Alright, so I stepped out to go to a doctor's appointment. Let's go check in on DJ's progress. Alright, so back from my doctor's appointment, let's walk in and check out DJ's progress on the pig nose. Bro already has the engine in the car. Like, literally the last thing we saw, you were putting the valve cover on?
No, I was putting the cylinder head on.
You're putting the... But yeah, now it's bolted up to the car. Crazy. So, that is... Can you mount a truck engine in a car?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Look at that.
Dipsticks on the right side.
You just have to mount up the car accessories.
Yeah.
So while I was gone, was there anything that came up?
The crank. So the crank actually has, on the truck one, no race for the flywheel. That is difference between a 240SX crank, I guess.
Okay.
Is that there's actually a lip. If you come over here, and this does not exist on the truck one.
Oh. So is there anything else that came up while I was gone? You were cleaning injectors.
Yes. 2 of the injectors were actually bad. One barely flowed anything, and the other one flowed a ton, like it was stuck open.
Ugh.
So, going through your box of fuel injectors over there, I was able to find 2 and make a set.
This fuel injection machine, this guy saves our bacon all the time. So yeah, so these are the 2 injectors, huh? Yeah. So DJ was saying that these injectors, both of them are bad. One of them flowed too much, and then the other one didn't flow anything at all. So that's a good catch. DJ's a maniac over here. He's working on putting a starter in. So as you can see, engine's mostly installed, and DJ's working on doing something called putting a starter in. And that starter down there, he's got to do some special work. That starter to work for the starter that we decided to use to work in this, he has to use nuts and bolts through the bell housing, through the starter, to hold the starter in place. And I'm going to show you exactly why. Alright, so here I've got this block on the floor here. This is the old block out of the 240. This right here is the principal difference between the car block and the truck block. You can see this casting on the block right here. The starter mounts to this, and then there are bolts that go through this from the backside of the bell housing into the starter. Well, the problem is the truck blocks do not have this casting. And so in order for you to use a different starter, you have to use a starter that will mount up to the... You'll have to use a starter that mounts directly to the transmission case through the backing plate. So what he's doing right now is he is taking bolts through the bell housing to our starter. And of course the starter we used was a Nissan 200SX starter from a 1983 Nissan 200SX. It turns out I've done this before, and that's the starter that will work. Alright, there you go. That is that starter right there. is the key to the whole thing working, to making a truck block work in a car. Alright, so you're going to look at this video and you're going to go, hey, wait a second. I thought you had an engine in the car, and there's the engine. What happened here? What happened here? Because there's no pistons in this block. What's going on? So we had something interesting happen. So we got this engine in, and we got the engine cranking, and we actually even got it to run for a second or two. But something has happened with the wrist pins in this engine. So we've never had this happen before. These are ITM brand pistons, so they are Chinese knockoff pistons. But the pins are seized on the piston. And that was not something that we knew. That's not something we picked up on when we first put this together. So we're not sure what happened. So DJ is over at the machine shop with the pistons right now, getting an idea as to what happened. So I'm here with DJ. He got back from the machine shop, and here's the piston, and you can see, like, it doesn't rock at all. Like, the piston is stuck on the rod. So what did the machine shop say?
They said that the wrist pin diameter to the bore of the piston was way too tight. That is not something that you normally mess with. That is something the manufacturer is supposed to get right before you guys even get these pressed in. So, sadly, the manufacturer is the one at fault here, but they'll just blame you for not checking, right?
Once again, screwed over by aftermarket parts, which is the normal for the automotive industry right now. Those pistons, gosh, I mean, we bought them before COVID, so and before the stuff went to crap, which is even more frustrating. So it's been a few days, and we have a solution on these pistons, so we get this motor back together. Yeah. All right, DJ, what did they do? What happened?
Well, they from the last video, you guys seen them seize up in the piston. The wrist pin seized up in the piston. And the machine shop basically had to press them back out without damaging the piston, and repolish the wrist pin, clearance, basically hone the piston diameter so that the clearance of the wrist pin getting pressed in now has an oil clearance.
How do you feel about this job? How confident do you feel about this?
I feel a lot better, knowing that the machinist looked at it. They're willing to put their name on it, so I know that when we get this together, it's going to be a runner.
So we're going to leave DJ to putting the engine back together again. It is also our shop open house tomorrow, and so he's hard at work working on that, and I'm hard at work getting our stuff ready for the shop open house. Alright, we got DJ putting the clutch back in. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, clutch is going together. Here's an interesting factoid. The clutch has to come from a truck, right?
And the flywheel.
Yeah, so you have to use a flywheel and clutch from a truck to fit the truck motor in a 240SX. And why is that?
The clutch in the 240 is actually smaller. The spacing on the flywheel is actually out farther on the 240 versus the truck.
So in other words, we have to run a different flywheel and clutch
to accommodate for the 200 SX starter.
Okay.
That's it.
Oh. We went from a 225 millimeter 240 SX clutch, which by the way, we measured, it is 225, it's not 240. So a 225 millimeter clutch. And also we went from a 225 to a 240 millimeter clutch in a 240 SX with a truck block, so it has better clamping force now.
I'd agree.
So up top, the car is back together again. Trans is getting ready to go back in. we might have this thing fired in a couple hours. All right, DJ, go ahead and start it up. Is that the face of happiness?
Oh yeah, truck motor in a 240 productive day.
So, DJ, what do you think that seems like there's a little miss on acceleration. What do you think that is? You think it's that crap injector?
Yeah, it's a good possibility.
Yeah. So, further stuff to do, right?
Yeah, radiator's leaking, some other stuff. Alternator's not charging. So, little by little.
So yeah, I think now that we have it running, we've proved that you can put a truck motor into a 240SX. We're just battling some little stuff, like DJ just said, the alternator, probably a bad injector. I think we need one more injector, and we gotta troubleshoot this alternator. Why is that not working? It still needs a shroud, so a few things, but case in point. Thanks for watching.